age 16 or so. So if you have a business interest or you are in business, you're qualified. And to become a mentee, if you will, you simply go to the website and register, I'd like to have a mentor. And what we do is we look to match the client's need with somebody who has that particular skill set. So if it's HR or it's marketing or it's sales or it's finance or administration. So in a sense, we match the person with the need. And what's really, really unique is that we can also bring in other mentors as those needs evolve. And once somebody's a SCORE mentee, they're always on the books and they're always available.
It's such a great idea. It reminds me, my son had a friend who, I don't know how it worked out for him, but he went to school at something called the Uncollege or No College or something, and it was in the Bay Area. And it was basically that. They set people up with somebody that could be a mentor. The demographics sort of surprised me. It's not all young, up-and-coming entrepreneurs that come knocking on the door of SCORE. Who is it?
Well, we really run the gamut between 30 and 50-year-olds. And it really goes by timeline in terms of the people who are being attracted to create new businesses. I think as we went through the cycle following the crash in 2008, more and more people said, I want to start a business. And what they really wanted was a job. So we helped them see that to some extent, because running a business takes a lot of tenacity, gumption and guts, et cetera, and creativity. And hopefully a dose of a willingness to listen to outsiders.
Now, when you said you could go as young as 16, how does that work? Do you go into the schools and look for people, or they just know to call you?
Yeah, well, first off, it's kind of fascinating. We just participated in a program at Santa Barbara Community College, which had business plans submitted by both high school students and their college students.
Is that the Scheinfeld?
Yes, it was. Yes, okay. And we just completed that a week or so ago. So people start businesses or have entrepreneurial ideas. And it's great to partner that up with somebody who can say, well, what about this? And making certain that they understand the dynamics of a business. It's one thing to have a product, but you need to know how to market it, how to reach your audience, how to price your product, and how to make it all happen.
When I asked you after you mentioned the cycle of people starting their businesses after they were laid off for many years, and some of those didn't work out, I said, owning your own business isn't for many people. And you said it's not.
Yeah, here's the thing about being a business owner versus a job person, a person having a job. A business is 24/7. It's on your mind all the time. And a lot of people, that's not what their life is about. They feel that's not the way to show up on the planet. And so they want a job that has a beginning, a middle, and an end. It starts at 9 o'clock in the morning. They do their job. They produce, hopefully based on what the expectations are, and then they go home at night. They may still think about it.
That's interesting. So if you're one of those people who has a job, but you're thinking about 24 hours a day, you might want to consider being a business owner, right?
Yeah, that's a very good point. Absolutely true. I've owned businesses myself, small businesses, as well as I've been executive vice president and president of companies being up to $1 billion in size. And when you own a business, and I had a couple of small retail businesses, it was funny. It was like a family affair. So,
what was your favorite business that you owned?
Well, believe it or not, I had a retail cigar lounge.
You did?
Yes.
Where?
It was down in Costa Mesa. And it was a concept that my stepson came up with, and the idea of a family business was such a beautiful idea. And it was really fascinating because we created a business plan and with position descriptions and business systems, and my role was as more of the business advisor and the CFO. But he and his mom basically ran the business, and it was very fascinating. And we caught the wave of the cigar love affair that happened in the mid-'90s.
Yeah, there's still one on Upper State Street.
I know. I
was reading also in your bio, since you mentioned being a CFO, you were the CFO of Pinkerton's?
Pinkerton's, Select.
Pinkerton's, for the really young people out there who don't know, that was even the agency that found Jesse James, right?
It goes back to 1850.
I thought it was amazing.
And it was, most people don't realize that the Pinkertons were actually also part of the security group that was covering Abraham Lincoln.
Oh, wow.
But he gave them the night off. So it's kind of fascinating, a piece of a history. So Pinkerton as a name has been around forever, and originally it was almost a gang. I mean, it was there to enforce the labor laws of the 1850s. That's when it went back to.
So you're somebody that's unusual that floats from being then an entrepreneur and owning your own places, then to working for large organizations. Do you like one over the other? Or?
Well, right now, in addition to SCORE, I do business consulting, and I love when there's a continuity. And because with continuity, you get to appreciate the subtleties of a business. You get to see most companies, when they have a problem, the problem is a presenting problem. It's not the core issue. And so one of the things, the more that you know a company, the more that you understand how it really works and how people interrelate, you get to see that most problems are a symptom of a core issue. And if you address the core issue, that gets resolved. But if you keep putting out the symptoms, it's kind of like high turnover. If you have high turnover in staff, that's a symptom of a lot of other things, how you're recruiting. And if you fix those things, turnover stops.
Well, that's interesting, because if people really have to look within themselves to say, well, maybe something to do with me that I'm having the turnover, and people get into a way of thinking it's hard to change.
Yeah, and maybe that's, I said earlier, the word ego. Most of our customers, most of our clients in SCORE are females. 60% are creating more and more businesses, and we get a large percentage of also minorities here in Santa Barbara particularly. So it's the ability to say, okay, this isn't working. Who can I ask? And with males particularly, we try to figure out ourselves. Most as women,
it's true,
that's
though,
what we do.
Mm-hmm. So just to define who is coming to SCORE, you do have people that have a business plan and want to start, but you also have people that already have their businesses and they're going through something that is challenging for them, or they want to grow. What a tremendous resource, as we've said. Daniel Pink is somebody who wrote a book called Drive and then another one called When, and he was just in town at UCSB, and you were telling me some fascinating stuff. I've got to go pick up the book. And Drive is about what drives people to work, and we're seeing more employers trying to do some of these things in the workplace so that they can keep their employees, right, and make them happy, or is that basically it?
Well, it really is. Actually, you get incredible productivity when people are passionate about what they do. And conversely, they aren't productive when they feel they're being taken advantage of. And in the book Drive, and it's kind of fascinating because in my work as a CFO and an elite business leader, I used the principles of Drive before they were articulated in the book. Not that I'm brilliant, but it was like you want people to have autonomy. You want people to develop mastery. They want to catch their own errors, and they want to have a sense of purpose. And those are the three elements that are really articulated powerfully. And I'm working with a couple of clients right now in town that struggle with high turnover. And part of that is like, well, where are you helping them build mastery in their work? Where do they see the path? How do you link their personal purpose with the business purpose? And if you get people aligned, then it's fun.
Yeah, it sounds very different than the old, Mad Men.
Totally.
Going to work and not really, just knowing that you had to do the grind. Have we spoiled people?
Well, when you say have we spoiled people, first of all, I make a point that we really have, when you're working with any group, you have generational differences now. So, for example, when you say spoiled people, the boomers, people who are retiring now, expected very structured jobs. And they knew what they needed to deliver, et cetera. And the idea of the boss was somebody who sat up on a pedestal. If you talk to a millennial, that millennial will argue with the boss in a minute, saying, what do you mean? How are we benefiting the community?
But doesn't it depend on the kind of job? Like I know in Santa Barbara right now, if you're an engineer, there's zero unemployment. But if you're somebody who wants to be a barista, it can be hard to find a job.
Well, it's kind of fascinating when you say engineering. Engineering is a very structured, you have a beginning, a middle, and end. You start a project, you design it, and you have it out there. So it's one of those tangible types of things. But a barista is constantly called upon to create a wonderful customer experience, and that they come back. And so the thrust of that is very, very different. And so different people are attracted to those different types of work.
And that's interesting because not every business owner knows how important, say, that barista person is. I think Starbucks just learned this week how much it can cost them not to properly train their barista for customer service.
That was fascinating. One slip up is going to cost them a fortune,
Yep.
and it sends that message. And today, obviously, with the internet, et cetera, social media, you make one mistake and you can get blasted, 15 ways to Sunday.
Yeah, and I actually watched the whole video. It was fascinating because the two young African American men who were asked to leave, they remained very calm, even where the police came, which really empowered them, because there's no way you could look at it and say, oh, they were being disruptive, they should have been kicked out, because they were clearly nice young men who just hadn't put in their order yet.
I watched the video as well, and I was totally impressed with just what you just said. These people really were calm. And
Yeah,
like,
I would have
so
probably
weird.
lost it and started fighting.
So they'll be careful. They'll send your picture out to make certain that you're served coffee properly.
Do you see, as the new generation is coming into the workforce and needing different kinds of how they're being treated at work and what they think of as meaningful work, do you find that there are CEOs and supervisors of companies that are retraining themselves for this? And would they be able to go to SCORE?
The answer is yes, for sure. And in fact, one of my newest clients, I'm doing exactly that with an executive director, et cetera. But I'll give you an interesting story. One of my other newest clients is running a small restaurant, and he's a very young guy, and he's very purposeful. And since it's confidential, I can't give you the name of it, but it's like, he was at Earth Day. It was a pleasure to see him and see the people who are participating in his restaurant activities. And so the young people really already have that and that orientation. And so culturally, I think people know more about how to inspire a person. And all you got to do is look at the media, and when you make a misstep, you see where you're getting killed.
Yeah. I read a story. I was going to bring this up earlier, but I think you'd be interested in this, talking about getting in the new generation, because those are going to be your new customer base, right? And so
Sure.
you just Harley Davidson had just announced they're doing.
I saw that.
They're getting 10 students, and they're giving them Harley Davidson bikes, and they're having them use social media and talk about it at the end of their 6 months.
It's an internship.
Yeah, it's an internship. They get to keep the bikes. But I was just thinking that's a great plan. Instead of having someone come in and some big advertising agency, right? It's like, we're going to give these to the kids that we want the next generation to think that Harley Davidson is cool.
And
see
extra
what
clever
they do.
is everybody in the media is talking about it. So look at all the free publicity they've got.
Yeah, that too.
Yeah, and here's another dimension. It's kind of interesting. I mean, their market segment used to aim at the bikers.
Right.
And those are the boomers, certain age, profile, and they're going to move off. At some point in time, they're going to stop riding bikes.
Yeah, their backs are hurting.
Yeah, their backs. And also know people, from a perspective of using social media and being creative, the young, this is what they live and breathe. So if you try to get somebody who's over 30 or over 40 doing a lot of social media work, they wouldn't do as good a job.
You've been in many different communities. I think each community has a feel of the kinds of businesses they have. I mean, you think Santa Barbara, you think restaurants, but is there an area, and tech, in the Goleta area, is there an area that you feel like is just ripe to start growing in Santa Barbara in terms of businesses that just hasn't been tapped yet? Or
That's an interesting question. Well, first off, Santa Barbara is a hub, believe it or not, of coaching. There's all sorts of holistic, alternative types of health styles, et cetera. Many people in those realms have difficulty marketing, creating their message, and doing it in a way that reaches their target audience.
So you're talking about the life coach. There's
a
life
coach, but there's the health coaches,
right.
nutritional coaches.
Right.
There's this. I mean, there's a lot of subsets now.
Why do they have a harder time marketing their message?
Well, first, it's distilling it down in a powerful way so that people get the unique, what we used to call the unique selling proposition, a USP, or a value proposition. So articulating that and then using media to reach the audience that can pay. So there's a lot of people who want everything, but they can't afford it. So you've got to make certain that you know your message and what market would be out there, what would be an audience that would be in a position to pay, and make certain that your marketing activities, social media marketing, emails, and all the rest, reach that group. And that's a scientific thing. And people say, well, I'll just do SEO work or this or that.
Well, if you're in one of these, say, spiritual type businesses, or, for example, the people you were just saying at Earth Day, it's hard for them to balance making money plus also keeping true to their purpose of helping the world or healing people. It's almost like making money could be a dirty word.
Well, I would disagree with that, actually. First off, balance is obviously an issue. This goes to having a passion about your product. So talking about my colleague with the small restaurant business, he's passionate about his product. And his people are passionate. It's super fresh and it's super healthy, et cetera. So they know they have to pay their dues to get up and running and develop whatever they need to develop. So they bring that passion, and it's fun. One of my clients that is publicly known is Fuelbox.